When I was going through school, I remember there was a class, and that class was all about trauma. And just like any other class, there's a certain amount of like history that you go over, right? With like any kind of learning, like that's the beginning stages of it. And this class happened to be, like I said, about trauma. And we started going over the history, and it was all about women, right? And rightly so. Like there's been a big heartache around women fighting, like to talk about their trauma, and like men just completely disregarding it. As a matter of fact, the men of that era would actually lock up women and call them hysterical, right? And like anytime like they would get like something traumatic would happen and they would show any kind of emotion, men couldn't handle it, right? Because there was a certain amount of suppression that was happening at that time that men were doing, right? And with their trauma, and they had the same expectation, but women just kept on fighting for trauma, right? And that was the history. It wasn't until like World War One where men were coming back, like completely disorientated, acting goofy, and just kind of flat out mad, and they would call it shell shock. And that was the first time any kind of man kind of talking about trauma is at these extremely traumatic events would happen, and men would finally react to the point of snapping. Then you start hearing more stuff about women, like doing all kinds of stuff about like programs and all kinds of cool stuff about trauma. And it dawned on me that the only time men have talked about trauma is actually when there's been some sort of severity in war. I stood up in class that day, and I remember saying, I have trauma, and I've never been to war. Where are the men in this? Where are all the men standing up for trauma? Where are all the men? And how come we do not have all the things in place that women do? A lot of times men have taken to drugs and alcohol in order to suppress their feelings. What better way to suppress your feelings than to blot it out?
I've had it ingrained in me my whole life that mental health is just a ruse. As a man, it's just necessary for me to stuff my feelings and live life. I mean, by hiding my emotions, by not talking about how I feel about anything, just biting the bullet. But we don't have to stuff our emotions and our feelings, and we can talk about what's really going on in the real state of our mind, you know?